America, I'm Eric Ham, and we're coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And coming up on the program, the war in Ukraine takes a deadly twist in the lead up to peace talks. Meanwhile, trade talks between the United States and China appear to falter as Washington and Beijing trade barbs back and forth. We've got the latest on these and other stories along the way, but first, we start with the headlines. Iran demands guarantees from the United States to lift sanctions as part of any nuclear agreement after Washington reportedly sent a proposal that Tehran called acceptable. Nationalist historian Karol Nawrocki wins Poland's presidential election, narrowly defeating his liberal rival and dealing a heavy blow to the pro-European government. The U.S. urges Australia to ramp up its military spending to 3.5% of GDP. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says Canberra will assess its defense capability before committing to any budget increase. 3 Indian soldiers killed and 6 remain missing after a landslide triggered by torrential rains hit the Sikkim state. At least 30 people have died across northeast India due to flash floods in the past week. And Microsoft says it will invest $400 million in Switzerland to expand its artificial intelligence and cloud infrastructure, upgrading 4 data centers in Geneva and Zurich to meet growing demand. We start in Europe with the latest on the war in Ukraine, where right now we're learning Ukraine launched a major drone assault deep inside Russian territory, claiming to strike Moscow's military jets stationed across multiple air bases, including one in Siberia, thousands of kilometers away from the front line. The operation, codenamed Spiderweb, not only shocked Russia, but also sent a clear message to President Trump, who had earlier claimed that Ukraine has, quote-unquote, no cards without U.S. support. After Kyiv's daring assault, Ukrainian President Zelensky took to social media and described it as this country's most long-range operation, one that was solely achieved by Ukraine. The message appeared to be a direct response to President Trump, who mocked President Zelensky during the Oval Office shocker 2 months ago, saying his country doesn't stand a chance in the war. Now, according to Ukraine's security service, Kyiv's drones reportedly hit over 40 Russian bombers, estimated to be worth $7 billion, claiming these jets were used to target Ukrainian cities. Russia's defense ministry said its air defense systems intercepted and destroyed 162 Ukrainian drones overnight, but also confirmed that several of its aircraft did catch fire. Now, what's shocking was President Zelensky's remarks that followed the drone barrage and the timing of the brazen attack on Russian military installations.
Greetings, dear Ukrainian men and women. I just heard the report by the chief of the security service of Ukraine, Vasily Maluka. A brilliant operation was conducted on the enemy's territory, targeting military sites only, equipment used to strike Ukraine. Russia has suffered very tangible losses, and justifiably so. They deserved it. The operation was prepared for more than a year and a half. Every detail was planned perfectly. I can say with confidence that this was an absolutely unique operation. The most interesting part, and now I can talk about it publicly, the base of our operation on Russian territory was located close to an FSB department in one of its regions.
Meanwhile, Russia claimed it struck a military training facility in Ukraine, killing 12 soldiers. Ukraine's commander of land forces then announced his resignation, saying he felt personally responsible for the loss of lives. Backed by President Trump, Russian and Ukrainian officials are now meeting in Istanbul for a second round of peace talks, 3 years since Moscow's full invasion began. But negotiations to halt Europe's biggest conflict since the Second World War have suffered repeated blows as both sides continue to push demands that neither is willing to compromise on. Russia has said it will present what it calls a peace memorandum during the latest meeting to address the root causes of the conflict, which in Moscow's terms means Kyiv ceding territory and dropping its NATO ambitions. As both sides continue to launch attacks against each other, the peace talks look perfunctory, more a diplomatic performance than a genuine attempt to end the bloodshed. Now, the last round of talks held on May 16th in Istanbul failed to yield any significant outcomes except for prisoner exchange. For now, the search for a resolution grinds on, but so do the battlefield losses, and from what it appears, neither Russia nor Ukraine are ready to lay down arms. And now we take a look at a new flashpoint in the already tense trade war between the world's two biggest economies, the United States and China. Just weeks after both agreed to slash tariffs in a surprise deal, the war of words is now heating up once again. China has accused the United States of severely violating a recently signed trade truce, promising strong countermeasures in response. Beijing's anger comes after President Trump claimed that China has quote-unquote totally violated its end of the deal, though he did not mention the specifics. But later, a U.S. official reportedly said the Chinese side had failed to lift non-tariff barriers as promised, one of the core conditions agreed in a Geneva meeting last month.
With this agreement, we come to agreement that our reciprocal tariff rate will go down to 10% on the United States side, so it goes down 115%. We enter into a 90-day pause period for negotiations, which both the Chinese and the United States are very committed to, and the Chinese on their side also go down 115% to 10%, and they remove the countermeasures that they have in place.
The deal, a rare moment of convergence, saw Washington and Beijing lower massive tariffs, with the U.S. cutting rates from 145% to 30%, and China slashing its duties 125% to 10%. But China now says the U.S. has broken the pact, pointing to restricted access to chip design software, travel bans on Chinese students, and Washington pushing its allies to avoid Huawei-made technology.
The U.S. has unreasonably canceled Chinese students' visas under the pretext of ideology and national security, which has seriously damaged the legitimate rights and interests of Chinese students and disrupted normal cultural exchanges between the two countries. China firmly opposes this and has lodged representations with the U.S. This politically discriminatory practice by the U.S. exposes the lie of so-called freedom and openness that the U.S. has always touted, and will further damage their own international image and national credibility.
A spokesman from China's Commerce Ministry said the U.S. actions have also seriously undermined the understanding reached during a phone call between President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping back in January. Now, while Washington claims it's China that's backtracking, Beijing insists it's merely defending its sovereign interest. Despite the escalating war of words, two White House officials have reportedly said a call between Trump and Xi could take place soon, a move that could determine if the deal is salvageable or on the brink. Now, Treasury Secretary Bessent told CBS News that details of the deal could still be ironed out once the two leaders talk, but didn't give a date. And National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett said both sides remain open to discussions even as backroom negotiations continue to stall. But while the U.S. pushes for top-level talks, Beijing wants concrete agreements locked in at lower levels before any leader-to-leader talks take place. Now, all of this comes on the back of another surprise announcement from Donald Trump that the U.S. will now double tariffs on steel and aluminum to 50% starting Wednesday. At a campaign-style rally in Pennsylvania, the president said the move would strengthen the local steel industry and cut America's dependence on China. And so the trade truce that once seemed like a breakthrough now looks like it's hanging by a thread. With fresh accusations flying and retaliatory moves on the table, the once-held breakthrough seems to be descending into full-blown confrontation. And next, we head out west to Colorado, where a shocking act of violence unfolded on Sunday in the heart of Boulder, Colorado. A peaceful demonstration organized by Run for Their Lives, a group that's been holding weekly events to raise awareness about Israeli hostages still held in Gaza, turned chaotic when a man threw incendiary devices into the crowd. The attacker, identified as 45-year-old Mohammed Solomon, reportedly shouted "Free Palestine" before launching the assault and injuring 8 people.
I saw fire, I saw people falling and screaming and crying and tripping, and I saw the attacker have a Molotov. He had 3 Molotov cocktails, One of them he threw inside of a group, and one lady lit on fire from head to toe. And then the other 4 people were also injured and in a fire, but not as bad as the first one. And then the attacker came out from the bushes and the trees the second time, and he threw another cocktail, and on the second one he lit himself on fire accidentally.
The victims, 4 men and 4 women between the ages of 52 and 88, were transported to nearby hospitals. In fact, several of the victims suffered burn injuries, with at least one person reportedly in critical condition.
These, like, shoots of fire, linear, about 20 feet long, spears of fire, 2 of them at least, came across right into the group about 15 feet from me, because I sit there and watch them, but I try to listen also to what they're talking about, because I am concerned about the hostages.
The FBI did confirm that they are in fact investigating the incident as an act of terrorism. And the special agent in charge of the FBI's Denver field office said the facts point to, quote unquote, a targeted act of violence.
As a result of these preliminary facts, it is clear that this is a targeted act of violence, and the FBI is investigating this as an act of terrorism. Sadly, attacks like this are becoming too common across the country. This is an example of how perpetrators of violence continue to threaten communities across our nation.
And not just the brutal assault, but the FBI and Department of Homeland Security are also investigating Solomon's immigration status, which has been questioned by conservative political figures. The White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller claimed that Solomon overstayed his visa and blamed what he called suicidal migration policies.
So we're in close communication with the U.S. Attorney's Office. The U.S. Attorney and I just spoke on the phone again now, and in the coming days, decisions will be made about what charges to file and where. There's a couple different options, but what I would stress now, most importantly, is we are fully united, 100%, in making sure the charges we bring hold the attacker fully accountable.
Israel has also strongly condemned the attack, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying the victims were attacked simply because they were Jews, and called on U.S. authorities to prosecute Solomon to the fullest extent of the law.
The anti-Semitic attacks around the world are a direct result of blood libels against the Jewish state and people, and this must be stopped.
Echoing a similar sentiment, even the Israeli foreign minister blamed the media for spreading dangerous misinformation that fuels hate. Now, even though the U.S. officials have responded swiftly, the attack comes more than a week after the fatal shooting of 2 Israeli embassy staffers in Washington by a Chicago man who yelled, "I did it for Palestine, I did it for Gaza," as he was being led away by police. As of now, at least 57 hostages are still believed to be in Gaza, including 34 who are presumed dead, according to the Israeli military. However, the broader context remains tense, with Israel facing international scrutiny over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and pro-Palestinian protests growing across the United States. But what happened in Boulder is a stark reminder that the war in the Middle East is rippling far beyond its borders. And now moving to Canada, where a wildfire emergency is unfolding with alarming speed. As the thick smoke blankets the skies, more than 25,000 residents have been forced to evacuate across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. With scorching heat and no rain in sight, officials warn the worst may still be ahead. As both Canada and parts of the United States grapple with toxic air, the crisis continues to deepen. Our next report has details.
The skies are no longer blue over central Canada. Smoke rolling in like a storm cloud, ash raining down, and forests glowing red with fire. As per official numbers, more than 25,000 people have fled their homes as wildfires rip through Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. And with dozens of fires still active, entire communities are being uprooted, and the air has turned dangerous to breathe. The province of Manitoba is in deep trouble. Over 17,000 residents have been evacuated since last week. Now, even though officials have declared a state of emergency, the town of Flin Flon, which is 645 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg, sits at the center of the crisis. More than 5,000 Flin Flon residents have fled. Power has been knocked out in the nearby community of Cranberry Portage, forcing 600 more to evacuate under mandatory orders.
We do expect some very, very challenging conditions in Flin Flon and in the surrounding community, particularly later this afternoon. The situation there is very, very serious, and we are doing everything that we can to preserve life, but also to preserve people's livelihoods and homes in the region.
In Saskatchewan, at least 8,000 people have been relocated. Premier Scott Moore didn't mince words. The next 4 to 7 days are absolutely critical, he warned. Dry heat and relentless winds are fueling the fires, and resources are stretched to the limit. Some fires are growing faster than crews can track. Officials are praying for rain, but forecasts offer little hope.
It's a very serious situation that we're faced with in Saskatchewan. We do need some rainfall. We need that sooner rather than later. And in light of that not being in the forecast, we most certainly are putting in place every measure possible to prepare our province, prepare our communities, and prepare those that live in our northern communities that are threatened by these wildfires in the days ahead.
Alberta has seen around 1,300 residents flee as wildfires continue to spread. The situation was dire enough to prompt international help. The U.S. Forest Service has deployed an air tanker and 150 firefighters. In fact, even additional equipment is en route. The mission? Support exhausted Canadian crews and try to keep more towns from being swallowed by flames. In Manitoba, evacuation centres are full. Some have opened as far south as Winkler, just 20 kilometers from the US border. Winnipeg has opened public buildings, but hotel rooms are running out. Indigenous leaders are demanding urgent action. Grand Chief Kyra Wilson of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs said evacuees are sleeping on floors, sitting in hallways, waiting outside.
It's really sad to see our children having to sleep on the floor. People are sitting, waiting in hallways, waiting outside, and right now, we just need people to come together. People are tired.
But the smoke doesn't recognize borders. It has drifted into the US, dimming the skies and poisoning the air. On Sunday, air quality reached unhealthy levels in parts of North Dakota, Montana, Minnesota, and South Dakota. Visibility dropped and breathing became difficult. Canada's wildfire season runs from May to September. In 2023, the country suffered its worst season on record, and this year is shaping up to rival it. The fires have no mercy, neither do the skies, and even though communities are resilient, Canada waits for help, for rain, and for hope.
And finally, in North Korea, new satellite images are shedding light on Pyongyang's frantic efforts to salvage a warship that partially sank during a failed launch over a week ago. The 5,000-ton destroyer, a key part of Kim Jong-un's naval expansion, now appears surrounded by balloon-like objects. Experts say it's possibly part of an improvised recovery plan, and the mishap has prompted a rare admission from North Korean state media, arrest at the shipyard, and direct orders from Kim Jong-un to repair the vessel swiftly. Our final report has more.
North Korea's latest attempt at flexing its naval muscles has dramatically backfired. New satellite images reveal a half-sunken destroyer lying on its side, propped up by what appear to be giant white balloons. These new images have come after the ship was seen covered in a massive blue tarpaulin sheet. The 5,000-ton warship, intended to be a jewel in Pyongyang's naval modernization crown, partially submerged after a catastrophic launch failure on May 21st in the port city of Chongjin. The launch mechanism malfunctioned, sending the ship's stern plunging into the water and leaving its bow marooned on the dock side. This is according to a rare acknowledgement by the state media KCNA. These new satellite images from Maxar Technologies show that North Korea has deployed more than a dozen white balloon-like objects around the vessel since May 23rd. Experts say the purpose of these oversized orbs, possibly aerostat aircraft similar to blimps, remains unclear. But they could be part of a desperate salvage effort. Theories range from attempts to prevent further flooding to obscuring the scene from drone surveillance. Others believe the balloons might be a makeshift way to ease the pressure on the ship's damaged hull. Naval experts warn that lifting a ship of that size from above could inflict more structural damage, especially with the forward section still wedged firmly on land and the rear slowly succumbing to water pressure. Other experts feel that North Korea may be eventually forced to dismantle the destroyer piece by piece, a far cry from the glorious launch spectacle leader Kim Jong-un had envisioned. The botched debut of the still unnamed destroyer has been nothing short of a national humiliation. Kim Jong-un, who personally witnessed the launch disaster, slammed it as a criminal act. He further demanded the ship be repaired in time for a major ruling party meeting in late June. 4 people, including the shipyard's chief engineer, have since been detained. The North Korean state media has downplayed the damage. They claim there are no hull breaches. The state media also estimates that repairs could be completed within 10 days. But analysts remain skeptical. Navy experts say that the actual recovery might take up to 6 months, depending on the extent of saltwater intrusion and structural damage. For now, the warship, a symbol of North Korea's maritime ambition, remains caught in a limbo, half in water, half out, swaddled in blue tarps and buoyed by balloons. If nothing else, North Korea has once again proved that when propaganda meets physics, physics wins.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.